Hey everyone, I want to make a quick video in response to the US actions on trying to ban TikTok, WeChat, and possibly a lot of other apps in the future. If you've been following the news or reading the news, you'll see that the US government, they've just gone all out. And this is really the next step in the new Cold War, that the US just wants to shut out all Chinese competition. It doesn't want to let any apps into the markets because, as we can see with TikTok, Chinese apps are highly competitive. Contrary to what the Western media likes to say, contrary to popular opinion, the Western media always says Chinese movies, Chinese entertainment, Chinese apps are just not appealing because of censorship, because of the state control. China just doesn't have innovation. It doesn't have good ideas. But what we're seeing in reality is that these apps are blowing up and actually dominating the world. TikTok is the #1 most downloaded app in the entire world. There's no app doing better than TikTok. And I believe, because I've been living in China for 5 years, I totally understand why. You might be sitting there thinking, why the heck is a Chinese app doing so well? If you're living in America or Canada or Australia or wherever, you might not really understand. You might be thinking, well, this is weird. Like, how did this Chinese app do it? How did it dominate? Well, the fact is, Chinese culture based on Confucian philosophy, based on these thousand-year-old philosophies like Buddhism, Taoism, Confucianism, the Chinese government and Chinese apps, they really do try to make things that are healthy. I know that's kind of a weird word to use. When we think of healthy, we think of wellness and exercise and yoga, but when you live in China, the word healthy just means doing things that are not going to lead to addiction or violence, division. Chinese apps, Chinese information, Chinese media always try to create things that promote peace, promote understanding, promote respect, promote intelligence and scientific thinking. So when you use an app like TikTok, I'm not saying everything in TikTok is scientific and fun, but what I'm saying is the app does try to promote things that are peaceful, things that are fun, things that are more family oriented. So I can totally see why families would want to download TikTok, because it's a very safe app. Like you can download it and you won't be afraid when your kid uses it. Because at least in China, they do censor all the stuff that's too sexual, too violent. All that stuff gets censored away. As you know, Chinese laws are quite strict when it comes to media information, and they don't allow over-sexualized content. They don't allow overly violent content. And they don't allow content that is going to create division among society. Things are going to point out one group in the country or blame one group, or those things are not allowed. Those kinds of sensitive issues where you're basically sowing division, sowing hatred is just not allowed to be broadcast. If you have divisional ideas, if you hate the government, or if you have negative feelings or thoughts, that's fine for you, right? As an individual, that's fine. But in China, it's not so good to be propagating those ideas. If you think all black people are bad, or if you think all white people are bad, you don't get to put that on a platform and let that idea spread to millions of people. That's just not going to fly in China, because you can't manage a country of 1.4 billion people if everyone's hating each other, if everyone's pointing their finger at another person and creating hate. It also doesn't jive with Chinese culture. As you know, if you have Chinese friends, Chinese people are extremely peaceful. Extremely peaceful. Chinese culture is probably one of the most non-confrontational cultures in the world. Think about it. Think about the time you've gone to a Chinese restaurant, or you have a Chinese friend and you disagreed with them, or you were hostile towards a Chinese person. What do they do? What does a Chinese person do when faced with hostility or aggression? They usually just walk away, right? They usually just turn their back, walk away. They don't participate. This has been thousands of years in the making. There's no way you can hold together a country the size of China. Besides Russia and the USA, it's the largest country. Sorry, Canada as well. Let's look at those countries. Russia, Canada, and USA, their populations are not even a fourth of China's. Canada's population, Russia's population is like not even a tenth, right? It's nothing compared to the population of China. So geographically and by population, China is absolutely massive. It's incomparable to Western countries. And over the millennia, there's no way an empire that size could survive if everyone just hated the fuck out of each other, right? You have to build a culture on peace if you're going to hold together such a large empire. You got the Cantonese people in the south, Tibetans in the west, Uyghurs in the northwest. You got Hui people In the northwest, you have Beijing, northern Chinese, there's a lot of Manchurians, there's Koreans there. In the east, you have the Minnan people, they speak another language. In Sichuan, they speak Sichuan language. In Wuhan, they speak one. All of those people are very different. They speak different languages, they speak different dialects. They have different ideas and sometimes different religious beliefs. Cantonese people are very different from Beijing people. Shanghai people are very different from Chengdu people. They have different ways of thinking about life. That's why I love Chengdu, because Chengdu is way more relaxed, way more about enjoying life, whereas Shanghai is all about that money and very competitive. I could be wrong, but that's my feeling. Okay, now getting back to the new Cold War. If ByteDance agrees to sell its company for tons of money, I mean, ByteDance is going to be one of the richest companies in the world. So it's a great deal for ByteDance. If WeChat sells its holdings, it's going to also make a lot of money. But this needs to be said. If those sales happen, if WeChat gets sold over to an American company, if TikTok gets sold to an American company, this is such a loss in the propaganda wars between the US and China. Right now, there is a massive information propaganda war being launched onto China. China hasn't really done much back because that's the way Chinese culture is. Chinese culture is not vengeful. And it doesn't really want to hit back when it's hit, because that's just how you create war, right? When someone hits you and you hit back, it's a never-ending cycle of violence. And even though a Christian motto is turn your cheek, if someone slaps you on the left cheek, you turn your right cheek so they can slap you again. That never happens, okay? In the West, that never happens. If you slap American on the left side of the cheek, it will nuke your right cheek. It will drop bombs all over your entire country. And very ironically, that's what Chinese usually do. You slap them on the left, and they just walk away. Because they know that it never ends. That's why Chinese people are so peaceful. So let me finally get to my point, after just blabbing for 7 minutes here. If ByteDance sells TikTok to America, if Tencent sells WeChat to an American company, this is a massive loss in the propaganda wars, because then America doesn't need to ban those apps. If America banned TikTok, banned WeChat, then the US no longer has any moral high ground over China. Because right now, America always likes to say, we don't ban anything. We're so free. America's the freest country in the world. We allow everything to come in. Although that's not true. America bans lots of things. America already banned Huawei. You can't buy a Huawei phone. Huawei phones are not connected to all the big American telecom companies like AT&T and all that. Samsung from Korea, they have a huge special cooperation with American telecom companies. Huawei has none of that. You cannot get a Huawei phone, from what I understand. So America does ban things, right? But if it does full out ban TikTok, the most popular app in the US, the American people will know for a fact that America is no better at all than communist China. Even though every day America says they're better. They always say we are more moral, we are more trustworthy, we are more open, we are more transparent. All of those things are not true. From what I've seen, from what I've read, I try to read a lot of books these days. America, in all of those categories, they're actually worse than China. If you know about Edward Snowden, Julian Assange, America is collecting massive amounts of data from the entire world and storing it forever in huge data centers in Utah, okay, in the desert. So America actually doesn't have any moral foot to stand on, but it pretends. So it always says, China, you banned Google, you banned YouTube, you banned Facebook. That's true. And that's because those companies didn't follow Chinese law. During the Urumqi terrorist attacks on innocent people, both Uyghurs and Han people died, both Kazakhs and Hui and Tajik people, everyone living in the Xinjiang province, innocent people were killed because of separatism or jihad, religious extremism. During that time, Facebook and Google were not willing to ban radical information from being propagated. So China had every right to block those companies. And it's a good thing they did, because now there's almost no terrorism happening in Xinjiang, or even in Greater China. So thank God. So back to the point, if America actually banned TikTok and WeChat, then the American people would explicitly know their countries know better. And it's never been better, but it would explicitly know that. There would be no illusions. Just be out there. Okay, America is as bad or even worse than communist China. And then people, especially young kids, because young kids love TikTok, 10-year-olds, 12-year-olds, they'll have to face the fact that their country banned an app that they loved. And that is a huge propaganda loss for the US. Of course, they would spread lies. I have no doubt that the Western media would double down on their hypocrisy and bullshit, and they will say, "Oh, we had to ban it, and China's evil," and then all these young kids are going to be indoctrinated. Their minds are going to be filled with all these lies that they had to ban TikTok, they had to ban WeChat. That indoctrination is happening at 10 years old, 12 years old. That's really, really disgusting. But that's what's been happening in the West since colonization, really. The masses have been indoctrinated to hate the local peoples, kill the local peoples, to take their land. My opinion here is that if I was the Chinese government, I would ban the sale of WeChat. I know that's very authoritarian, it's very dictatorial, but that's what I would do in this new Cold War. The people living in the US are not going to be happy with those bans. And then the USA would have to grapple with the fact that all the illusion that it's morally superior to China is false. It would be out in the open. Also, America's been doing this already. America's already been controlling all of its companies. Every time Donald Trump signs an executive order telling US companies to not trade with Huawei, to not trade with ZTE, to not do this, to not do that, America has been extremely dictatorial, extremely authoritarian. So ironically, China has not. China has not been controlling its companies. ByteDance is free to do what it wants. Tencent is free to do what it wants, and usually they do things in the benefit of the shareholders. So public companies always consider profit first. So they don't care about the new Cold War. They don't care about who's winning the propaganda war, the information war. They're going to only do what's best for their company. But in this situation, it's so important that those apps just get banned, because that will show the truth of this new Cold War. That will show who's really the big dictator of the world. If WeChat and TikTok get sold over, then the USA can just pretend that they're still free. Just keep going along and saying, "Oh yeah, look at us. We never banned anything." They did. They did want to ban WeChat. They did want to ban TikTok, but they forced those companies to be sold over. They pirated those companies. All right. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. Thank you for supporting me with your donations. And don't forget to click the little bell. If you want to make sure you get all my videos, click the bell beside the subscribe button. And peace and love.